All right, welcome to our show, Ask the Master Auto Technician. I got a question that someone they've been offered a 2008 Prius for free. All they have to do is put a battery in it. They said the battery's been removed and want to know if that's a good deal. And I said, that's a good question. Let's find out what a Prius is worth. If you go to Kelley Blue Book, you'll find that Prius in good working order, in good shape, good to fair shape. It's going to be worth between $4,000 and $5,000. Somewhere in that area, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. So how much does the battery cost to put in? Well, if you go buy a battery, I want to say my cost of these batteries wholesale is around, I want to say around $2,300, $2,500, somewhere in that general area, plus tax. And then you're going to have to stick it in, and then you're going to have to put all the parts back together again. If they removed the battery, whatever they did with it, they probably didn't put the parts back in, like the back seat and all the molding and all the plastic and all the trim. So the whole interior is gutted out from behind the front seats back. Everything's out of the car, all the way back to the spare tire. Everything comes out in order to do this job. So you're going to have, if someone gave you this Prius for free and you say, okay, I got to put a battery in it, so you're going to have a minimum of $2,500 approximately for the battery, plus labor to stick it in. And if you don't know what you're doing, you'll pull your hair out before you'll get it running, because there's a lot of little headaches that I've found over the years changing these batteries. Like sometimes people don't put the safety latch in correctly. They don't push it in, latch it, and slide it down. I've seen that happen, and that happens all the time with guys that know what they're doing. They sometimes don't do that correctly. But the reality is, just to put a battery in and out, if you paid someone to do it, now remember, you're going to have, that's about 4 to 5 hours worth of work if you've got a battery in there already and you know where all the nuts and bolts are and you go to put it back together again. It's a lot easier to put one back together if you take the nuts and bolts out and you know where they're at. But if someone brings you a car with nuts and bolts and a box and everything, now you got a jigsaw puzzle you get to put together. So reality is, you'll probably put about 6 to 8 hours worth of labor in it. So just say it's $800, another $2,500 for the battery itself. So we're at, just say $3,500. I'm just rounding things off. So you got $3,500 in it, and that's just about what the car is worth. So it's your call. I don't know. It's it's kind of like, you're darned if you do and you're darned if you don't. If you want one that you don't have to have headaches with and go and make work, and it has a good battery in it, a new battery, you can find them out there all day long on the internet. A new battery, maintenance called up for $4,000 to $5,000. When they were brand new, these were $28,000 to $35,000. They were. I own one. That's why I know these things. We had my 2004 when it was brand new was $28,900. That's what it cost brand new. I saw the invoice on it. By the time I bought it 3 years later, it was around $12,000 to $13,000. By the time a car is more than 6 years old, it's depreciated 66% of its value. So if you got so I'm just rounding things off. So if you got a $100,000 Jaguar, 5 years later, it's only worth $44,000. That's 66% depreciation right there, depreciation. So it just kind of gives you an idea how quickly cars do not maintain value. I don't think I've ever seen a car get more valuable unless it's a collectible like a 55 Chevy or something like that that's been restored, I guess. But it's a buyer's market out there. It's not so much a seller's market when it comes to cars. It's a buyer's market. I tell people all the time that want to buy a car that's been my father-in-law, give a perfect example. He says, I want to buy a military Jeep, an old 55, 53, something like that Jeep. And I go, well, what are you looking to spend? He said, well, I found one the other day that needs to be restored for only $1,000. And I looked at it and said, sir, my professional opinion as a technician, buy one that someone's already put $10,000 to $15,000 in it, restoring it for about half that. If someone puts $10,000 to $15,000 in a vehicle, you can pick that car up and they get tired of it for less than $8,000, just off the top of my head, just throwing a number out there. I said, you can find one already restored. Sure enough, he got on the internet, looked around, found one restored. Even has a mount for a 50 caliber machine gun, minus the machine gun, of course. But the point being is, he found that for the price he was looking for and didn't have to spend hours and hours and hours rebuilding it. It's just like this person with the Prius. When you buy a car that needs work, you're going to put, you really, it's like a pig in a poke. You really don't know what you're getting. It could have other problems that you're not aware of. I've actually put batteries in my own car. I put a battery in my car. Have one of my techs did, and when we put the battery in there, it wouldn't start. It wouldn't move. And this is what we do for a living. Well, when he was putting the battery in, he broke a little ceramic resistor. Little teeny tiny thing, 12 bucks. But that little resistor caused the car not to be able to move. He didn't realize that how fragile that little resistor in there. Remember, this is all electronic components in here. It's just like if you open it up, it probably looks like the inside of a circuit board of a TV. That's just kind of like an idea, give you an idea what's going on. But there's a resistor in there, and he somehow or another tapped that resistor, cracked it, and caused it not to have continuity, and it caused a problem. Set a code. I looked at it and said, okay, this is the code we got. This is the test we do. Go here, look at that. Did that little test. Ah, that's broken. You know, no one has it. It has to wait 2 days to get the part in. So I'm just saying, when you start doing jobs like that, when someone says, oh, all you got to do is here's the car, put it in, you're asking, you really don't know what you're getting. You may be getting something you really don't want. So my advice, unless you're an auto technician or you do this for fun, and even if someone gives you a car, you know, like this Prius, this 2008 minus a battery, you're going to have about $4,000 to $5,000 in it. When it's all said and done, when you do the maintenance on it, get it where it's working right, they're giving it to you. Probably the tires are from 2008. You know, probably the fluid's not been changed, the antifreeze. You probably got a bad cooling system. You know, probably got the original radiators 10 years old. You know, I'm not saying all those things are bad. I'm just saying, be aware. I see people all the time wanting to restore cars. Like I was talking about my father-in-law. He wanted to restore a car. No, don't restore it. Find someone that's already spent the money to do it. Then buy it from them. They've enjoyed the process of restoring it with their child or their grandchild or whatever, or our project doing it, and that makes them feel good, and that's wonderful. I know people do that all the time. They take raggedy old cars that don't have any, they should be in the salvage yard, and make them, well, they make them where they're drivable again. They make them where people want to drive them. I saw a guy yesterday with a 61 Ford Econoline. Really neat. JC Custom Work. Anyway, nice guy. But it looked like all he did was take it and Brillo pad it down with a Brillo pad and, what do you say, a Comet. Just to etch it up real good, I knocked the rust off and painted it with a clear coat. And then he sanded that down and painted it several times. Really interesting looking car. You got, you know, 50 some, almost 60 years of patina growth in there. 60, yeah, of patina. And it's kind of a neat looking car. But that's something he took. It took a Ford engine out of it, put a Chevrolet drivetrain in it. But the point being is, that's something he can do and he enjoys doing. I wouldn't give the amount of, if he wanted to sell that, he could not sell that car for how much money he's put in it, getting it ready, and the time and labor. He's probably got $30,000 worth of time and labor. Maybe not much material, but if you put his time and what he's put into it and the parts and add all that together, easily probably $25,000 to $30,000. You could probably pick that same vehicle up for a fraction of that when he gets tired of it. That's one of the things I recommend. So if you're looking to buy a Prius that's got problems, buy one that's already got working, where you can get in the car, hit the button, and drive away and see how it works. For the same amount of money, you can get something that you don't have to work with. That's just my advice. If you're wanting to buy that Prius out there, it would be given. That will be given to you. All you have to do is put a battery in it. It could be more of a headache than it's worth. That's my opinion only. But anyway, if you got a car question, give us a call, 850-763-0555. My wife mentioned this morning, says, you might want to talk about these oil change places that do quick oil changes. I said, they do a good job for what they're doing. She's not that, but some people go in there and want a cheap oil change. And not saying that the shop doesn't know any better, but maybe the guy that's working back there shouldn't be putting in regular 5W30 petroleum product oil when the car comes in specifically designed for a synthetic oil, such as BMW, Mercedes, Corvette,
Hondas, Toyotas.
You know, oh, yeah. And what ends up happening is not that they're being malicious, not that they're being mean, not that they're just uninformed. They're just ignorant to the fact that this car requires certain. Oh, I had a car come in yesterday, 2008 model Chevrolet truck, and the customer said, well, yeah, while we're at it, we want to do this, we want to do an oil change, that's okay. Your car calls for synthetic blend oil. And he looked at me and said, what? Actually, it's a 2008. 2008 Chevrolet engines, or GMC, they have variable valve timing. They use oil pressure to change the timing. And variable fuel control. They have where they can control the cylinders from 8 cylinders down to 4 cylinders. All those things work together. And I said, and he said, well, I just been running regular oil in it. I said, well, you can continue to run regular oil in it. I said, it's up to you. I said, you get to change it more often. It doesn't lubricate as well. And normally by the time you get 150, 200,000 miles on this engine, it's got problems. I said, but I know people that run full synthetic oil in the same engine that are pushing 500,000 miles. Now, they change their oil every 6,000 miles, put a filter in it. You know, and the only thing they've had to do to the car is change the fluids in the car and the filters. They hadn't had to rebuild the engine or change the camshafts or cylinder heads or lifters or any of these things. Where people who don't use full synthetic oil for cars that call for at least a synthetic blend, and just about anything from 2008 up to today really should be using a minimum of a synthetic blend oil. Matter of fact, there's a lot of cars out there that are going a lot older. I'd say all the way down to 2004. If you have a 2004 Ford vehicle, 3-valve, if you're not using, or the 5.4 engine, if you're not using Mobil 1, at least an equivalent of full synthetic oil, you're going to have problems getting over 100,000 miles in this car. Now, I know some people that do, but they're very, very picky about changing their oil every 3 months, every 3,000 miles, whichever comes first. They don't tow with it. They're really easy on the vehicle, and they do quite well like that. But these cars called for a minimum of a synthetic blend Motorcraft oil. Now, it's synthesized oil. It's a petroleum product that's been synthesized. Doesn't mean it's a great oil. Doesn't mean it's a bad oil. It's a pretty good oil. But the thing is, it doesn't last 7,000 miles. It doesn't last 6,000 miles. It doesn't last 5,000 miles. Normally, by the time you get around 3,500 to 4,000 miles, your oil filter's clogged and your oil is pretty well past its point of holding things in suspension. That's the thing about synthetic oils or synthetic blends. They do a great job of keeping metal from making contact. They do a great job of getting rid of heat. They do a great job of lubricity. That's one of those engineering words. They do a fantastic job. But synthesized oil, which some people call full synthetic oil, won't hold a candle to full synthetic oil. Polyalpha olefin, that is PAO. That's a fully man-made synthetic oil, comes out of a test tube, doesn't come out of the ground. And the only 3 oils out there I know of that carry it, now it's not me saying this, it's the American petroleum industry, is Mobil 1, AMSOIL, and Redline. Not Lucas, not Kendall, not any other Quaker State, not anything else, not Pennzoil, AMSOIL, Mobil 1, Redline. Now, I don't even know where you can find Redline oil at, but that's a full synthetic oil according to automotive engineers. I don't even see it in this part of the country. I think it's more out west. But here in Panama City area, northwest Florida, you shouldn't have any trouble finding Mobil 1 from Walmart down to your local mom and pop store. Just about everyone carries Mobil 1 oil. Now, I have people say, well, if I use Mobil 1 oil, does that mean I got to use it forever? No, but once you start using it, you'll want to continue using it forever because it works so much better, makes your car run so much better, gets better fuel mileage, sounds better when it's cold in the morning, sounds better when it starts up, just a much better oil, and you will notice the improved difference. Hey, this is James Morris. We'll be right back.
If you want the best deal in town for tires, you need to call Baytown Tires at 873-8900.
Hanson and the guys at Baytown Tires take pride in serving Panama City for over 20 years. Baytown Tires on Highway 98 in St. Andrews. All service work backed by a nationwide warranty.
Water is too powerful to fight alone. Mr. Router Plumbing. Sink, shower, and toilet emergency drain services.
Fall is here. Kids are in school. Holidays are around the corner. Time to visit friends and family. Give us a call, 850-763-0555 for your free AAA safety inspection.
Part of what I'd like to let you know is what we do and how we work our system. Basically, we've got about 700 stocking dealers scattered around the 15 counties here in the Big Bend area of the state. I run a fleet of trucks, vans, and what we call hotshot vehicles to deliver to our dealers quickly so they can help service you as fast and efficiently as they can. Provide timely and efficient service, and we're there to take care of our dealers, who in turn can take care of their customers.
I got another email here from someone who's got a 2009 Navigator with a 5.4. We're just talking about a 5.4 engine, but the 2009 5.4 is completely different than the 2008 5.4 3-valve, or the 2004 to 2008 5.4 engines are completely different than the 2009. And even the 2003 5.4 2-valve engines were completely different. They're like the 4.6, just a great workhorse. But the 5.4 engines have a little bit of problems, but they've been around for a while. But here's one that they wrote me, and the problem is their fan won't cut off until they cut the car off. Their blower motor, it blows high all the time. And the other problem is they're hearing a ticking in the dash, and they say it all started about the same time. Well, I don't know all the answers and everything, so I go to a computer, and I type in the blower motor runs all the time, will not shut off. Well, I'd sit there and I said, so I went to Identifix and Direct Hit, and it says blower motor runs all the time, won't shut off. And now I don't know if you have a code, if the person who wrote me has a code in there, and there was a code B2266 in the electronic air conditioning control module. Now, that just tells, normally that code tells you there's a problem with a blend door motor. That's what that code means. And when you hear a ticking sound, that normally means there's a blend door that's got a gear, that's one of the teeth are stripped on it, and it's click, 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 and as it goes through, it's blending the temperature from hot to cold. And after they get a few miles on them, 2009, you know, we're talking about a car that's 10 years old almost, they wear out, the plastic gears wear out. So you'll get a ticking sound, and it normally happens when you first crank the car. Well, I don't care if it's a Ford, Chevy, Honda, Volkswagen, they all have these electronic blend door actuators that they're plastic. They go bad. They get tick, 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 tick sound, and it drives people crazy. Oh, my car is going to blow up. No, it's just going to drive you crazy. If it bothers you that much, just hit the blend door motor to make it hotter or colder by a degree or two, and the noise will stop in most cases. I'm not saying it will always stop, but it does. At least you got an idea what's going on. But now, the blower motor running altogether, that could be because the blower motor actuator is shorted out, causing the motor to run all the time. That's one of the things that can happen. I've read on here, but in most cases, that's not the case. And most of the time, I don't care if you have a Chevy, Ford, Chrysler, Honda, whatever. If you got one, when you turn it on, you got fan, and it only goes off when you shut the car off. You got what's called a blower motor resistor that's faulty, or a blower motor controller, or power resistor. There's about, every company's got a different name for it. It's the thing that takes the voltage and drops it down from 12 volts down to 8 volts, down to 6 volts, down to 5 volts for high, medium, low, and super low, whatever, by cutting voltage down. Well, that thing shorts out, and now you got wide open 12 volts going to the blower motor when the car is in their own position, and it blows all the time. That's normally what that is. It could also be, there's a technical service bulletin on this one right here, to add a ground, because the ground is bad on this blower motor here. That's one of those things they talk about right here. If sometimes just grounds are one of the biggest things that drive people crazy. And I tell my guys, anytime that you suspect the ground is at fault, instead of taking your digital voltometer and see if you have 12 volts and you have a ground, don't do that. Please don't do that. I've gotten my guys in so much trouble, and us in so much trouble, because, well, we got voltage and we got a ground, so we think everything's fine. Put a part in there, still won't work. Always take a headlight, a halogen headlight, a seal beam headlight, something that's going to draw some amperage, anything 5 to 8 amps, something like that. A seal beam will draw about 12 amps when you first crank it on, then drop down to about 8. But take a headlight and find the ground, wire you up a headlight, find the ground on the circuit, click, put the end of the headlight into the ground circuit, and then find the positive part of it and the 12 volts, and put it in there, and see if the headlight lights up. In most cases, you'll do that, and the headlight won't light up. It'll just sit there and look very dim. You go, ooh, why is it just dim? Well, and then you can take that positive post you put to the, always 12 volts, you can put it in the battery and see if it gets any brighter. If it gets any brighter, then you got a problem getting voltage to it. The ground's good because it got nice and bright. But if it still stays dim, then it's not the problem. It's not voltage. Then do the same thing, put it right back where you had it in the 12 volt reference that you thought was good. It still probably is good. Take the ground and find a good ground, like to the battery. If the light gets nice and bright, you got a bad ground. Run you another ground. And that's how that works. Now, that didn't sound very hard at all, did it? But that's how we diagnose if we got, when a part burns up, an electrical part, it's not because it just decides to burn up. Normally it burns up due to either low voltage drop. Electric motors, actuators, starters, alternators are all designed to work on 12 volts or greater up to about 14 to 16 volts with no problem whatsoever. Matter of fact, the higher the voltage, the less resistance it has and the less heat it has. The lower the voltage, the more resistance and the more heat it generates. So if you got a car that's supposed to operate 12 to 14 volts, now it's only up, now this part is only getting 10 to 11 volts. That means it's getting less voltage and it's getting more heat, more resistance, causing problems. Now, it could be the ground side, it could be the positive side, whatever case, it doesn't matter. It's still working on not full power. Things are going to get a lot hotter, a lot quicker, and die a lot sooner than they should die. And that's why I see people sometimes put fuel pump after fuel pump after fuel pump in a car. And they go, how many fuel pumps you put in this thing now? Well, we're on number 5. I said, anybody bother to check if you got a voltage drop on this thing? And you could drop a pin when I do that. Yeah, we did a continuity test on it with our digital voltometer and we got voltage here. And I said, did you do a load test on it? And when you say that, there is no silence whatsoever. I mean, there's silence. I mean, they do not know how to do a load test. I have come to the conclusion that if you ask 10 mechanics out there how to do a load test on a starter or an alternator or anything out there, very few of them are going to know how to do a load test on a circuit. You know, how do you load test a circuit for a EVAPS canister or a purge valve, or how do you load it for a ignition circuit? That's a big one right there. Go click, click, click all the time. I have people all the time. It goes click, so I know my key's working. Yeah, the key's working, but maybe you're not getting 12 volts down there. Maybe you're only getting 9. What? How can I be getting 9? It's a 12-volt battery. Voltage drop. Part of life. As things get older, resistance creeps in. It's just like us. As we get older, we get a little stiffer. We don't move quite as well. We get, you know, things don't move quite as freely. They get bound up. Well, it's the same thing on cars. They do. They just get older. And the electrons can't move as freely. When that happens, your headlight, perfect example, you see these older model cars and trucks going down the highway with very dim headlights. Most people say, well, that's because they need to buff their headlights. Yeah, maybe so, but you know what I'm talking about. You got one headlight that's just barely glowing. Well, if you see that, that's a bad ground normally, or not getting full voltage. Somehow or another, there's a voltage drop there, and that headlight will show you that there's a voltage drop. Normally, it's a bad ground, and 90% of the times when I see a headlight that's just barely glowing, it's a bad ground. Honest to goodness. I see that in so many things out there. Fuel pumps that I talked about, people put 5 fuel pumps on. I go, okay, let's do a load test on the circuit. Go get a headlight. Get me a headlight, halogen headlight. Go to the plug-in where the fuel pump is. Find the positive, find the negative. Plug the headlight into it. Turn the key into the crank position. Because the fuel pump will not work in the run position for more than about 0.2 of a second. When you turn it to on, you got a momentary power going back to the fuel pump to prime the pump, and then it shuts off. And then you have to crank the car. When you crank the car and you're in crank mode, then it allows the fuel pump to come on and circulate. So that's what I do. I tell them, put a headlight on it, crank the car, see what you got. You'd be surprised how many times a car comes in here with a bad fuel pump. They're on their 2nd or 3rd fuel pump because we've talked to them about it. Yeah, I'm tired of doing this. I pulled this fuel tank out 3 times and I can't figure out what's wrong with it. We go back there, unplug the wires, put a headlight in it, crank the car, and that headlight, it burns. Not very bright. We can take that same headlight, go to the battery first, see how bright it is. Then we go back there and it burns okay, but it's kind of dull. We go, okay, we got a voltage drop. We'll do the same thing. We'll take the negative side and find a good ground. Is it brighter? If it's not any brighter, we know that's not ground's not the problem. Then we'll go to the positive side of the battery. Is it any brighter if we put positive battery? Yeah, well, then we got on the positive side. That could be a connection. It could be a bad relay. It could be, you know, there's so many things it can be, but you need to check it out. It could even be the ignition switch. I've seen ignition switches do weird things over the years. I've seen ignition switch not even shut cars off. Had one the other day, you crank the car up, it just started up fine. But you went to shut the car off, it wouldn't shut off. Turn the key off, car kept running. If after about 4 or 5 times, finally the car got a very common problem on a lot of General Motors cars, they won't shut off. Bad ignition switches, very common out there. But anyway, those are just some of the things that I see on a daily basis out here on how to keep your car running. Too many people think that it's too complicated to work on cars. It can be. Cars can be complicated, but there's certain things you've got to do, certain things you can't bypass. You've got to make sure that you have proper voltage and grounds. You've got to have that. You really, if you're going to work on a car, you really need to have a minimum of a digital voltometer. Do not use an analog old-time meter with a needle. And it causes a lot of problems and actually burn a computer up. If you put this to that and it's going through the circuit, you can kiss that computer goodbye. That's why we use digital voltometers. It has enough resistance in there to keep it from shorting out the computer. So those are just little tricks over the years that we've learned. And that started, when I talk about the tricks about using a digital voltometer, that started back in 81, 82. They told us that in class. Throw away your analog voltmeter because you can't use that on today's cars. You can on certain things, like look at the battery, but he says get rid of that analog and go to digital. You'll find out you won't do any damage that way. Just some little tricks out there. And here's another one out there. If you got headlight on today's newer cars, say 2008 and newer, and you go on a Chrysler product, or you own a Jeep, or you own, I'm trying to remember, some maybe Toyota. No, mainly Chrysler and Jeep. I think that's what I'm thinking about. If you have a headlight that goes out, or a tail light that goes out, or anything that goes out, the bulb's bad. You take it apart, you see the bulb, you see it's obviously bad. Bulb's burnt. Okay, put a bulb in it, and it still doesn't work. You got to have a scanner to clear the codes, because the way the thing is designed, it sees there's a problem with that circuit. It shuts the power off to that circuit. It does. The computer says, I'm not. I have a possible short there. That's how critical it is, and all this goes through the computer, the body control module. It says, hey, there's a circuit not working on here. We're going to cut the power off just in case it's an electrical short for a fire hazard, so no power can go back to it whatsoever. So you not knowing that, you put your light bulb in there and hit your brake. No brake light bulb. Why do I not have a brake light bulb? It could be because you've got to clear the codes. So like I said, sometimes certain things on cars aren't as easy to fix as you would think. Like changing headlights or tail lights or brake lights, because without a scanner, you're not going to get them to work. You've got to clear the codes after you change the parts. And on today's cars, a lot of parts that you get put on, say you're wanting to put on another fuse box on some of these cars. We call those total integrated power modules. That's right. You have to marry that to the car. You have to program that to the car, what accept it. You do. Yeah, anything on a car today has to be married to the car to make sure that it's working like it's supposed to. Anything electronic. I did see something unusual yesterday where a used car lot had taken a total integrated power module out of another car and clipped all the wires and wired them all individually one by one together and taped them together. Didn't solder them or anything. And the car ran. I was kind of like, wow, that's impressive. I mean, I didn't think it was possible that you could do that. But they did. They took one out of a salvage yard. They bypassed a few things. I didn't think it could be done, but they did it. And apparently it can be. But it's just one of those things, not a good repair. It's not a repair I'd want to charge my customers for and would be acceptable, because there was a few things that were NQR, not quite right. Hey, this is James Morris. If you want to avoid that not quite right problem, give us a call at 850-763-0555 Monday through